Welcome to Laguna Woods Stories, where we meet interesting people who live right here in Laguna Woods. And our guest today is Jim Gibson. And Jim, I looked you up on Google, and I find out there are a lot of Jim Gibsons. So, but you are the Jim Gibson who wrote the book that we're going to be featuring today. Not paid 11 cents an hour to think. So we're going to learn how you happen to write that book and the story behind it. Well, let's start by finding out a little bit about you. Where did you begin life's journey?
I was born in 1948 in Santa Barbara, California.
Santa Barbara, California. Mm-hmm. What a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And were you educated there and
my family moved from there when I was 7, but I took my first art lessons in the Santa Barbara Museum of Art.
Okay.
And that led me into that direction.
And you are an artist, and we will...
I'm known as an artist here for the past 17 years in the village.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what did you do career-wise?
I did two things. I worked as a hospital corpsman.
As a corpsman, you would meet people as they came in?
I had a special job. I was hired by a specialist who, the United States Army's burn care center was run by this surgeon who retired from the Army, and he was hired by the USC School of Medicine to run their burn center in Los Angeles County, USC Medical Center. Ah. And he wanted corpsmen to work for him because he knew that we could get things done.
Okay.
And so I worked there until I was about 30 years old, in the intensive care unit mostly.
Oh,
very extreme kind of work.
And then?
Pardon me?
And then?
And then I got tired of that, and I went back to community college and took some graphic arts classes and got into the printing trade.
Really?
I worked in graphic arts until I retired.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And how did you happen to come to live in Laguna Woods Village?
Well, in 1955, my family moved into Orange County. And I grew up in Anaheim, and so as a kid driving by with our surfboards, I realized they were building this community, and we laughed at it. We thought I'd never live there, you know. we had names for it.
Me too. Yeah.
But when I was living in the mountains for a while up in the Arrowhead area, I'd sold my place, and I came back down. I said, "Well, I want to come back down here where my family and friends are, my kids are."
Right.
And everything was very, very expensive on the outside. So I was able to find a nice unit that I could afford right here on Mariposa. Mm-hmm. And I've been real happy living here for the past 17 years.
Wonderful. Yeah, 17 years. Mm-hmm. And what do you do to amuse yourself primarily here in the village?
I mostly paint. I got into the studio right away. And that's my number one thing in life.
So working in graphic arts, of course, requires a lot of art skill. And
I have a degree in art as well.
I see.
I've always been into art.
And so here you primarily have been a painter. Yeah,
I have been. When I first came here, I was known mostly as an abstract painter. I taught classes, everything. But I do all kinds of work. I have currently in the village, I have 2 pieces that are on permanent. One piece, which is on permanent display in Clubhouse 7. It's a large triptych that I did for the community right as at the opening of the building in 2005, I think it was, something like that.
And it's still there,
hanging there behind the bar in the bar area there.
So you can.
And currently, I have 2 horses. Portraits of horses, our horses, by the way, hanging in the lobby of the community center building.
Yes, I've seen them. Beautiful, beautiful pictures.
So I go all the way from abstract to photorealism, and lots of stuff in between.
Wow. Okay, good. Well, let's move on to this book. Again, an unusual title, "Not Paid 11 Cents an Hour to Think." And tell us how this book came about, and I know that you brought some photographs to help illustrate the story, so we'll be seeing those from time to time.
Well, I had written it's written in 3 parts. The first part, it's a 30-year span of life, by the way. All 3 parts amount to 30 years.
It's a memoir.
It's a memoir. The first part is about my life leading up to the time that I actually entered the war. Mm-hmm. The second part is about the war itself. It's all in chronological order. Mm-hmm. The third part is what my life was like for a long time afterwards, as living my life as a Vietnam veteran.
Okay.
And then at the end, returning to Vietnam on a trip of peace and reconciliation.
Okay. So we have some pictures. Do you want to? Shall we show the first one?
Yes.
All right. Here's a copy of the book, Not Paid 11 Cents an Hour to Think, by Jim Gibson, and move on to the next one.
I'll explain a few things if you'd like.
Oh, sure.
That's me when I was 20 years old at the top.
Okay.
You can believe that.
Yeah.
And we look different when we were 20. And the picture, just so he's right, that's my basic training album photograph.
Uh-huh.
I just had gotten drafted into the Army. And down here at the lower left is me with my shirt off. This is in Vietnam, out in the field, holding up our company dog and consoling him.
Okay.
It has a story all by itself, which I can get into later.
All right. And moving on, what do we have here?
This is an illustration of one day of my tour, serving there as an Army medic and ambulance driver.
Now, this is some artwork that you did.
Yes, I did this. It's a large oil painting. It's a 30 by 40 inch oil painting. And it's an illustration of one incident that happened on one day. I was called out, of course, as a medic to respond to emergencies and evacuate people, treat them, and get them into the hospitals. We had a bad plane crash out in the field, and there was 2 pilots that were severely injured. And actually, one of them passed away right there. But this one was hanging on to his life, the guy with the bandages on his head. And that's me holding him up. We're trying to get him onto a helicopter.
Oh, yeah.
And the helicopter above him is what we used to call a dust stuff with a red cross on it. It's an air ambulance.
Wow. Okay. And moving on?
There I am when I'm 18 years old. And that's my high school senior picture.
Okay.
From 1966 at Anaheim High School.
Okay. And next?
This was a man who I didn't know personally, but my first girlfriend in high school knew him personally.
Oh, really?
Because her family were close with the Nixon family.
Yeah, I see.
See, Nixon's
of course,
grew up in Yorba Linda.
Yes.
I lived just a few miles away from there with my family in Orange Groves, right, real close to that.
I see.
So that was kind of interesting. I recalled visiting her home, first date I had with her, and she pulled out this photo album of her with the Nixon daughters, and I thought, wow, I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah.
Of course, later on, I wasn't so impressed by the man, but
okay.
This illustrates how I came to view him later on.
All right. And next.
It's also an oil. They're all oil paintings.
Oh! This is an oil that you
They're all
did.
large oil paintings.
Okay, and another president there.
Yes, I call this the politicians. These are the guys that mistakenly got us into that terrible war. That's, of course, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president. To his right, the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara. And to his left, the Secretary of State, I believe, Dean Rusk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, this is a painting that you...
They're all original oil paintings.
Oil paintings. I see your name in the corner there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And next we have...
Okay. The guy on the left, I knew him too.
Oh.
This is a picture taken, excuse me, once I got drafted and into the Army, in basic training, we had a set of drill instructors, and this was our head drill instructor, the guy on the left.
Oh, wow.
And this picture I found in a magazine, and it was taken of him and his lieutenant while they were out on a patrol, getting ready to go out on a patrol in Vietnam.
So this is an oil painting by you based on a picture you found
yes,
in the magazine. Okay. And those unique haircuts, was that typical of the time?
These were scary-looking kind of guys because they were truly scary people.
And so they were, in fact, scary people. And how were you related to these guys?
Well, he was my, the guy on the left was the company first sergeant.
Okay.
and he was ahead of all the other drill instructors. He was so scary that the other drill instructors were afraid of him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I guess that's part of the job of a drill instructor to
They're not nice
inspire
guys.
fear. Okay. And next?
There I am, hadn't been in Vietnam long. I think I was maybe 20 years old at the time, and I'm sitting behind the wheel of my ambulance, waiting for something to happen.
Okay. So
Probably pretty tense, you know.
So you were a corpsman, which meant that you would go in and remove injured soldiers and that sort of thing right after a battle, or even during a battle?
Both. I had varied duties. We'd transport people a lot who weren't injured, that maybe they were just sick. We'd bring them out of the field and into hospitals, but maybe they were injured. Maybe they had some serious injury. All kinds of things. I gave a lot of inoculations. One of my jobs was to give about 14 different vaccinations to all the soldiers around us. So, so we various duties.
Wow.
But I was trained as a combat medic, and I was assigned to this ambulance company when I got there. And I stayed on a large base for a few months, and then they shipped me out to a much smaller base out into the field, where I worked in a very small MASH unit, which is a mobile army surgical hospital.
Right. Those of us who remember the Korean story of MASH, remember that.
It wasn't a funny kind of movie.
No. So it wasn't nearly as much fun as in the TV show, I'm sure.
When I got back from the war, that movie came out, and I thought, what are they laughing at? Of course, that was in those days.
Yeah. So how big a base was that you were?
Well, the one that I was where I spent most of my time, we had a handful of Americans. We had more Thais. The Thai Royal Panther Division was out there, but they were mostly out in the field all the time. But on the base at any one time, there could have been a couple of thousand soldiers out there, I suppose.
And you were working in tents, I suppose, or that?
It was like a tent. It was like a 10 building surrounded with sandbags. We had one surgeon, one doctor, and we had. But we had a lot of. We had X-ray capabilities and lab and small surgery.
And did you feel fairly secure when you were in that facility, or was it positioned so it could have been easily overrun?
Well, it could easily be overrun. Out there, it had just gotten overrun before I got out there. I was stationed. The headquarters was on this large base, about 15 miles away. Long Bend was the name of the base. And the word had gotten out that, well, you don't want to go out to Bearcat. That's the name of the base.
I see.
Don't want to go out there.
And you didn't want to go out there?
Well, I had no choice in the matter.
Right.
You know, they said, Gibson, get your duffel bag in your ambulance.
They didn't ask you where you'd like to go.
You're going out there. So I spent the next 8 months out there.
Wow.
But I would drive every other day from Bearcat into Long Bend, along a muddy rutted road through villages and rice paddies and Viet Cong, you know, like that.
How big you serviced radius, I suppose, from that medical facility? How far out would you go with the ambulance?
Oh, depending on what the need was, wherever they sent you out. Sometimes you could drive 50 miles or longer.
Really?
Sometimes we would drive all the way from out to the Parrot's Beak, out by Cambodia, and we were all over those roads.
Wow. Yeah. I imagine you saw some pretty scary things.
Yeah, I did. I saw my share of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse, but most medics see a lot more than the common soldier. You know,
yeah. Because you're right there.
We're dealing with the sad stories.
The aftermath of the fighting.
Right.
Yeah. How did that affect you?
Well, I was able to do pretty well with it all. Coming home was a different matter. But while I was there, I was intent on getting my mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I was against the war, by the way. Completely against the war.
Is that why you were a medic?
Yes.
Yeah.
I insisted.
You were CO?
I wasn't an established CO, but I was a CO. So I thought, well,
conscientious
I said,
objector.
I'm not going to a war where I don't have an argument against anybody to kill anybody.
Yeah.
So if I have to go over there, I'm going to be a medic. I'm going to save lives and not take lives. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that. I always carried a gun with me, and I thought, well, it comes down to it. They're going to. My life is more important than anybody else's here. But my job was to save people, to help people.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Okay. Let's go on to the next picture.
And on the base, on the bases, the Army would try to would bring in these mostly women to do manual labor on the bases. They would clean the tents and wash our laundry, all kinds of things that they would do. And these are young women coming onto the base. And I thought I call this the three mama sons.
Okay. What kind of field is that in the background?
A rice field.
Okay, really.
Getting close to harvest.
And the helicopters coming in. Yeah. Okay, next.
This is me and Hog Jaws.
The dog, I presume.
This is a great dog story.
Okay.
Okay, we're out at Bearcat, which is, it's a real military place. We're out in the field, actually. Anything could happen out there. But anyhow, we had these two dogs that we had adopted, our company. And one was Greg, and the other one was Hog Jaws. And we loved our dogs. One day, Greg turned up missing. And we couldn't understand how that happened. Somebody figured it out. One of our guys on our unit had gotten transferred off of our base to another unit down south. Well, Greg was missing, and we figured it out. We put two and two together.
He took the dog.
He took Greg.
Yeah.
So, what are we going to do? So one of our friends had a lieutenant friend, or maybe he was a warrant officer, that was a helicopter pilot. So a couple of guys got into the chopper with him, flew down to that base down there in the Delta, and had a little surprise attack on the landed right next to the barracks. They ran into the barracks. They grabbed Greg and got right back in the helicopter and sped back to us, and we had him on the radio. And we're all excited. Greg's coming. Greg's coming. And so here comes the helicopter coming in, and the pilot had a real war mission to go on right there. He said, well, I'm not even going to touch down. You guys just jump out with Greg, they're down close to the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So it was excited, and the blades were blowing, and dust, sand was blowing everywhere. And so the guys jumped out with Greg and put him on the ground, and Hog Jaws was there, and he wasn't the brightest dog in the world, but we loved him anyway. And so Hog Jaws ran out. Of all things, he got into a dogfight with Greg.
Oh, no. After all that.
And so I went right up to pick up Hog Jaws, and I was consoling Hog Jaws right there, trying to calm him down. And a friend of mine took that photograph of me right then.
And again, this is based on a photograph, but this is a painting by you.
By me,
Yeah. Something like a dog can become just extraordinarily important in that situation, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean,
some sense of normalcy or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't entirely crazy all the time. We had our moments where we would play basketball and, like that. War doesn't go on all the time, every minute that you're there.
Were you, did you have some way of communicating back to the States? Or
Only through letters.
Only through letters.
Handwritten letters.
And how long did it take a letter to get one way or the other?
They could get it within about a week, I think.
Okay, so fairly quick.
Yeah, I think it took about a week to get my letters. And I wrote one every week, and I got one home every week. As a matter of fact, my book is based, the middle part is based on the letters that my mother saved, the letters that I wrote.
So you were sort of documenting your life in a sense, without probably thinking that those would become important to you.
Never had any idea. I wrote the letters and forgot about them, and after my mother passed away, a few years later, I was looking out in the garage, and I found an old shoebox. And there were all my letters in there.
Oh, my.
So I used that to write the chronological story of my time in the war.
Okay. Move on. This is a photograph, I think, not a painting, right?
This is a photograph. That's a passport photo. After I was released from the Army, I was a sad case for a while. I didn't know what I was doing. I had PTSD, but didn't know it. There was no such diagnosis in those years.
Yeah.
And
So not an unusual situation from the Vietnam vets, I think.
yes, a lot of us came back and we didn't know what to do with ourselves.
And you were not welcomed with open arms.
No, we weren't. I never got literally spit on. I mean, I was against the war anyway, and I was drafted into a war I didn't want to go to. But I came home, and I wasn't very well accepted by my old friends.
Yeah.
Oh, you were a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
Well, first, I didn't even venture out of my home for 2 weeks because I was ashamed of myself.
Yeah. And I think you were advised not to wear your uniform.
Yes, and so, but I never got spit on in the airport. But after a couple of weeks, I decided to go out, and I walked over to an old friend of mine, this girl that I'd been very close to before the war, and I knocked on her door, and her sister opened the door, and I said, well, where is she? Where's Janice? And she says, oh, well, she became a hippie and ran away to Haight-Ashbury.
Oh, really?
And we don't know where she is. I think she's on drugs. I said, oh, well, geez, sorry to hear that. So I left. As I was walking out the door, I saw a car pull up into the driveway, and it was her father, who I'd known very well. And I'd always liked the guy. He seemed like a nice guy, intelligent, kind of guy. And I walked over to his car as he was getting out, and I said, well, hi, Mr. Crosby, how are you doing? Oh, hi, Jim, I remember you. How many babies did you kill over there?
Oh my gosh.
So I went home again and didn't come out again for a while.
Oh, how cruel.
We had a lot of treatment like that.
Yeah.
So I got tired of hanging around, and after a while I took my jungle money, which I wasn't able to spend money on anything over there.
Right.
And I flew to Europe.
Really?
Spent the whole summer in Europe. That's my passport photo that I had taken just before I left for Europe. It was the summer of 1970.
Yeah.
And
pretty much the peak of the anti-war movement
it was,
right around there.
Actually, the Kent State massacre happened because of our invasion of our illegal invasion of Cambodia, and the country was just falling apart. You know, and I said, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I flew over to Europe, and I met up with my brother, who was in the Air Force at the time, in Berlin, Germany, and he was a security police, Air Force MP, and he knew the town really well. So we had a great time in Germany. And we traveled from Berlin all the way down to Athens. Yeah. And all the way up and down the boot of Italy, around Monte Carlo, into Barcelona, and to Paris. And
it must have been healing for you.
It was the best thing I could have possibly done.
Be in a place where Americans were not hated and were respected.
We were respected. Yeah, I was hitchhiking along the road one day, and the guy picked me up and took me home to his home. He lived in a mansion. This was just outside of Brussels, Belgium. He welcomed me with open arms because, oh, you're an American? You just got out of the army? And I said, yes. He said, well, we love Americans because they saved our family.
Wow.
In World War II.
Yeah, and that wasn't so very long before that people hadn't forgotten it.
Not that long. They didn't speak English, but their son, who would give me the ride, spoke English very well. And they fed me, and they housed me, so you could stay here as long as you want. They were a very wealthy family. Nicest people.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So a summer or several months of kind of healing time in Europe, and what was next?
Then I came home with $6 in my wallet. That's all I had. And some useless European coins.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm too proud to wire home for money. I'm just going to hitchhike across the country. So I spent the next month and a half hitchhiking across America.
Wow.
And it's all written about in my book. I have 60 chapters where all this is written, all my adventures and everything. And had some very interesting tales.
Really?
And then came home.
Those were days when GIs, especially hitchhiking, were pretty common, and not people weren't as afraid of it as it would be now.
Nobody hitchhikes anymore, but
No.
yeah, in those days we hitchhiked a lot. As a kid, I used to hitchhike from Anaheim, where my family lived, down to Newport Beach every day in the summer to go body surfing. And down Harbor Boulevard, and you get picked up right away. There was no danger. This is what kids did.
Yeah. So, so you eventually got home back to California, I guess?
Yeah, I came home and decided to go to school, back to school. I'd taken some college courses before I got drafted. And I enrolled at Fullerton Junior College and took art classes. And that was another great thing to do.
Now, had you been artistic, or were you aware of artistic talent before this?
Well, I've always been into art. Yeah. I used to get awards for it in high school and throughout school. And I really was enjoying school, and I met this beautiful young woman, and before I knew it, I was a father. And so then I had to get serious, and then I'll go back to the job I got at the Burn Center, where I worked for so many years.
Well, some pretty. That must be also a very hard place to work in a lot of ways.
It was extreme. Most nurses can't do that kind of work, and a lot of doctors can't do that kind of work. But corpsmen we were trained pretty well to handle stuff.
Well, you probably had seen worse things in Vietnam. So, so
that's why the chief wanted to hire a corpsman, because he knew that we could. We weren't shy, you know.
It was an awful time in your life. You have survived it. What would you say? We're almost out of time. What would you say would be the takeaway that you want people to get from hearing your story and reading your book?
Well, can I read something?
Certainly.
Okay. In the beginning, I write, I have written this book for you to be able to understand what can happen. If we are not careful, the wrong people and forces can take control and wreak horrible consequences. This book is especially intended for young minds who might want to know about these things. That's where I begin. And in the end, in the postscript, I write, I have come a long way since my return visit to Vietnam in 1993. After returning from the trip, I sought therapy and help for my condition of PTSD and received it. Facing my demons proved to be the right thing to do, as the ensuing years of my life have proven to be much happier and productive.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for sharing with us a traumatic and difficult time with a good resolution eventually.
Thank you very much, Tom, for this opportunity.
You're very welcome.